Today, I'll be going over all of the most secret items in Elden Ring. Golden Scarab. This talisman boosts your rune gain by 20%, and it's locked behind one of the most annoying boss fights in Caelid. You'll find it in the abandoned cave, guarding a treasure room after you fight 2 clean-rot knights in a closet-sized arena. These aren't regular enemies. They're the same knights that gave you PTSD in the swamp of Aeonia. Except now there's 2 of them, and you can barely roll without clipping a wall. The Golden Scarab became essential the moment players realized Elden Ring's open world meant grinding runes wasn't optional, it was survival. Early patches had people farming 11,000 runes from that cliff in Caelid, where enemies just walk off and die. With the Golden Scarab equipped, that became 13,200 per cycle. The math made it non-negotiable for anyone trying to level past 100 without losing their mind. From Software knew exactly what they were doing. They put the game's best farming tool behind a fight that punished rune farmers specifically, because of course they did. What makes this secret isn't the location. It's that most players walk past Abandoned Cave entirely because it's tucked into a ravine in Caelid that looks like every other poison-filled hellscape. The real trick is surviving the rot buildup long enough to even reach the fog wall. And here's the thing, if you're going for a one-shot build or any kind of level cap challenge run, you need this talisman before you even think about Leyndell. Without it, you're grinding twice as long for half the progress. But that's just survival optimization. What if I told you there's a talisman that cuts armor grinding from 3 hours to 20 minutes? Keep that in mind, because without it, half the game's content stays locked behind RNG hell. Silver Scarab. This one boosts item discovery by 75 points, which sounds boring until you realize it's the difference between farming a full armor set in 20 minutes versus 3 hours. You find it in the hidden path to the Halig Tree, but getting there requires you to walk across an invisible bridge in a giant crystal cave while praying you don't roll off into the void. There's no visual indicator, no Prismstone trail unless you bring your own. Just faith that From Software wouldn't put a talisman at the end of a path that doesn't exist. Except they would, and they did. The Silver Scarab sits at the far end of this invisible walkway, waiting for players who either read the developers' minds or watched a YouTube video with 4 million views titled How to Get Silver Scarab Easy. The community figured this out within days of launch because someone noticed a message on the ground that said, "Didn't expect invisible path," with 9,000 appraisals. That message saved more players than any tutorial FromSoft never wrote. The reason this matters goes beyond convenience. Elden Ring has armor sets with drop rates around 3% per piece. The Banished Knight set, the Clean Rot set, the Nox Monk robes. Without the Silver Scarab, you're killing the same enemy 50 times hoping for RNG mercy. With it, you cut that grind in half. For completionists trying to collect every piece of gear, this talisman isn't optional. It's the difference between finishing the game and uninstalling out of frustration. From Software knew players would want everything, so they hid the solution on a bridge made of nothing. Farming tools hidden on invisible bridges. That's annoying. But what FromSoft did next actually breaks your playthrough if you're not careful. And one weapon proves they'll delete content from your game just because you progressed normally. Bolt of Gransax. This legendary spear is one of the best faith weapons in the game, and it becomes permanently missable the moment you turn Leyndell into the capital of Ash. You find it by climbing the dragon statue near the Erdtree Sanctuary, jumping onto a balcony that doesn't look climbable, and grabbing a giant golden lightning bolt that's been sitting there since the game launched. The catch? If you beat Malekith and trigger the city's transformation, the spear vanishes forever. No warning, no NPC telling you to grab it first, just gone. This is From Software's favorite type of cruelty. They put one of 10 legendary armaments required for an achievement in a location that becomes inaccessible through normal story progression. Players who don't obsessively explore every ledge in Leyndell before the endgame will hit New Game Plus and realize they missed it. Reddit threads from 2022 are filled with people asking, "Where's the Bolt of Gransax after Leyndell burns?" And the answer is always the same. You're locked out, start over, or live with the gap in your collection. The weapon itself is incredible for faith builds. It scales with dexterity and faith, has a unique weapon art that throws lightning bolts from a distance, and looks like you ripped it off a dead god, which you basically did, since the lore implies it belonged to Gransax, the ancient dragon who attacked Leyndell. From Software took an entire dragon's story and made it optional content you can miss by progressing too fast. The message here is clear. Exploration isn't a suggestion, it's mandatory if you want everything the game offers. Missable weapons that vanish when the city burns. Frustrating, sure, but at least you can see the city changing. What comes next is worse, because FromSoft started hiding weapons behind NPC conversations you'll never have unless you rest at the exact right bonfires in the exact right order. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see what the DLC did. Eleonora's Pole Blade. You get this by defeating the invader Eleonora Violet at the Second Church of Marika. Triggers automatically upon reaching Altus Plateau. Completing Yura's questline provides additional lore lore and leads to the same encounter. It's a blood-infused twin blade that fires arcing slashes and builds bleed faster than most katanas. 4 bleed builds. This thing is a monster. The secret here is Yura's questline, which has progression flags tied to sites of grace that can cause you to miss dialogues or stages if not followed precisely. Miss the encounter at Murkwater Cave and Yura never shows up again. Kill the boss in Raya Lucaria before meeting him at the lake and his dialogue skips forward, potentially locking you out of later stages. From Software designed this quest to punish players who explore too efficiently. You're supposed to wander aimlessly, stumble into NPCs at exact moments, and somehow remember where they said they'd be 3 regions ago. No quest log, no markers, just vibes and community wikis. Eleonora's pole blade became a PvP staple because its weapon art covers huge range while stacking bleed buildup. Players using dual bleed weapons could proc hemorrhage in 2 hits, deleting health bars before opponents even got close. Patch 1.03 nerfed bleed scaling, but the pole blade stayed strong because its base moveset was already fast. From Software didn't nerf the weapon's identity, just the numbers. They knew it was powerful when they hid it behind a quest most players would never complete without help, so NPC quests can brick your rewards. That's FromSoft's signature cruelty. The DLC took this further. They added items that disappear based on who you choose to trust. And here's the twist. You won't know you made the wrong choice until it's already gone. Sword of Night. This one's in the DLC and it's obtained by giving Jolan the Iris of Occultation after completing Count Ymir's questline in the Cathedral of Manus Maitir. Giving her the Iris of Grace instead rewards Jolan and Anna's Spirit Ash. It's a katana with a dark blade that scales with intelligence and faith, perfect for hybrid builds running both sorceries and incantations. The DLC introduced choice-based missables as a new flavor of cruelty. Shadow of the Erdtree added NPCs like Ansbach, Leda, and Hornsent, all with overlapping quests that force you to pick sides. Help one, betray another. The Sword of Night is just one of several rewards that vanish depending on your decisions. From Software took the base game's Miss It if you explore wrong philosophy and upgraded it to Miss It if you choose wrong. Now you can't even replay the DLC without New Game Plus to see every item. What makes the Sword of Night special isn't just its stats. It's the fact that Jolan's quest ties into the lore about Miquella's followers and the Shadow Realm's deeper mysteries. The sword itself is linked to the Night of Black Knives, the event that killed Godwyn and shattered the Elden Ring. From Software buried critical lore items behind dialogue trees and invasion mechanics, then expected players to figure it out while dodging Messmer's fire spears. The community solved it through sheer collective obsession, but solo players? They're missing half the story. Choice-based missables where you pick between characters without knowing what. You'll lose. That's the DLC's new nightmare. But dialogue trees are just half the problem, because FromSoft also hid items behind parkour sections that would make platformer speedrunners quit, and one spell proves they'll test your patience just to see if you'll break first. Ancestral Infant's Head. This sorcery tool summons floating spirit heads that swarm enemies with magic damage. You find it by doing parkour in the Siofra River, jumping between stone pillars and praying your depth perception doesn't fail. One wrong roll and you're falling into the void, respawning at the last grace, and questioning every choice that led you to farming a spell in an underground river. The Ancestral Infant's Head is situational. It's strong against groups, but useless in tight spaces, where the spirit heads clip through walls. Most players grab it because it looks cool, and the Ancestral Worshippers have some of the creepiest designs in the game. But the real reason From Software hid it behind platforming is to test whether you're willing to die 20 times for a spell you might never use. The answer, for most players, is yes, because if it's in the game, you want it. This is where Elden Ring's secret design philosophy gets obvious. They're not hiding items to make them rare, they're hiding them to see how much frustration players will tolerate before giving up. The Ancestral Infant's Head doesn't break the game. It's just another tool in a toolbox with 50 other options. But From Software knows completionists will spend an hour dying to parkour rather than leave it uncollected. That's not respect for player determination. That's behavioral psychology wrapped in achievement bait. Dying 20 times for a spell you might never use. That's behavioral psychology disguised as game design. But at least you can see where you're jumping. What if I told you there's a talisman in the sewers that changes the entire PvP meta? And most players never found it because nobody wants to explore literal underground toilets. This is where secrets stop being clever. If you are enjoying the breakdown so far and don't want to miss out on any new releases, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Retaliatory Cross Tree. This talisman boosts your attack power on attacks performed immediately after a critical hit. You obtain it as a reward from Leda's questline in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC by siding with her during invasions against Ansbach. From Software hid a meta-defining talisman in the one place nobody wants to look, because they knew exactly what they were doing. The Retaliatory Crossed Tree changes parry builds from gimmick territory to genuinely competitive. A perfect parry already staggers most enemies for a critical hit. Add a 30-second damage buff, and you're stringing together parry chains that delete bosses in seconds. Speedrunners love this thing. PvP players abused it until everyone learned to bait parries with with delayed attacks. From Software introduced a talisman that rewards perfect timing, then hid it where only people reading wikis would ever find it. The casual player base missed it entirely. This pattern repeats across Elden Ring's secret items. The most impactful tools are buried in locations the game never points you toward. There's no NPC saying, check the sewers. No environmental storytelling leading you underground. Just a chest in a tunnel you'll never visit unless you're following a guide. From Software built an open world, then filled it with secrets that require external resources to discover. That's not clever design. That's outsourcing exploration to the internet. Meta-defining gear hidden in sewers. No hints, no direction, just hoping you check every random chest. But FromSoft wasn't done. The DLC introduced something worse: weapons locked behind faction choices where picking the obvious ally means you lose the better reward, and the game never warns you. Obsidian Lamina. This Reaper-like sword is the reward for siding with Ansbach during the DLC's final quest branches. If you choose Leda instead, you get a different weapon, and the Obsidian Lamina locks permanent. It's a blood-scaling sword with a weapon art that summons shadow slashes, and it's one of the best DLC weapons for bleed builds. Shadow of the Erdtree introduced multiple endings based on which NPCs you support. Ansbach, Leda, Hornsent, Theolier, they all have quests that overlap and contradict each other. Help one, the others turn hostile. The Obsidian Lamina is locked behind siding with Ansbach, which means betraying Leda before the final boss. Most players chose Leda because she's the more obvious ally, which means they missed Ansbach's sword entirely. From Software designed a choice system where the right answer depends on which weapon you want more. This is where secret items stop being about exploration and start being about information asymmetry. You can't make an informed choice if you don't know what you're choosing between. The DLC never tells you that helping Leda means missing Ansbach's gear. It just assumes you'll either look it up or accept losing content. For a game that sold 28.6 million copies, that's a design philosophy that only works because the community fills the gaps. Without Reddit threads and Fextralife wiki entries, half these items would stay secret forever. Faction wars where the wrong ally costs you legendary weapons. You'd think that's the peak of missable content. But FromSoft had one more trick. They hid a dragon transformation behind a single-use consumable, and if you use it once, it's gone forever. Why? Because they could. Priestess Heart. This consumable lets you transform into a dragon, changing your moveset and giving you access to dragon breath attacks. You get it by completing a specific NPC quest in the DLC that involves choosing between the priestess and another character. Pick wrong, and the heart vanishes. The transformation lasts until you rest at a site of grace, and the item remains in your inventory for repeated use. It's missable if you don't align with the right faction. This design choice exists purely to force replays. There's no lore reason the transformation needs to be single use. It's artificial scarcity designed to make the item feel rare, when really it's just annoying. What makes this a secret isn't the complexity. It's that the game never explains transformation items exist. You stumble into the priestess quest, make dialogue choices that seem arbitrary, and suddenly you're holding a heart that turns you into a dragon. No tutorial, no warning that you're about to lock yourself into a decision. Just From Software trusting you'll figure it out after the fact. The community solved this in days, but solo players are still discovering the priestess heart years later and realizing they made the wrong choice in 2024. One-time transformations that vanish after a single use. That's not clever design, that's just cruel, but at least those are intentional. What comes next exists because FromSoft's quest design actively fights against itself, and one charm proves you can lock yourself out of rewards just by playing the game normally. Magic Scorpion Charm. This talisman boosts magic damage by 12%, but increases physical damage taken by 10%. You get it from Saluvis after completing his quest, which requires giving him a potion that turns an NPC into a puppet. The catch? If you progress certain other quests too far, Saluvis dies, and his shop closes forever. No charm for you. The secret isn't finding it, it's knowing when to do his quest before the game locks you out. From Software designed overlapping NPC quest lines that punish you for progressing naturally. Saluvis dies if you complete Ranni's quest past a certain point, but Ranni's quest is one of the longest and most rewarding in the game, so most players focus on that first. By the time they remember Saluvis exists, he's a corpse, and his inventory is gone. The Magic Scorpion Charm becomes missable not because it's hidden, but because the quest structure assumes you're tracking 6 different NPCs simultaneously without any in-game tools. This is the point where secret item becomes quest design failure. The charm itself is powerful for mage builds. Boosting magic damage by 12% is significant when you're stacking sorcery buffs and using Comet Azure to delete bosses. But From Software tied it to a quest line that conflicts with another major quest, then offered no warning that you're about to lock yourself out. The community figured out the optimal quest order through trial and error. Everyone else just misses the charm and doesn't realize it exists until they check a wiki. Quests that die because you completed other quests. That's where secrets become design failures. But even that isn't the final layer. Because in 2024, Miyazaki admitted there's one secret nobody's found yet, and after 2 years of data mining, the community still has no idea what it is: Miyazaki's undiscovered element. In a 2024 interview, Hidetaka Miyazaki said there's one small element in Elden Ring that players haven't found yet. He didn't specify what it is, just that it exists, and the community hasn't discovered it after 2 years of data mining, theorizing, and testing every wall in the game. This could be an item, quest trigger, a lore detail, or just Miyazaki trolling the player base. Nobody knows. That's the secret. Reddit exploded with theories. Some think it's related to the dream mechanics referenced in cut content. Others believe it's a hidden ending tied to specific item combinations. The most popular theory involves the grace threads mentioned in item descriptions of golden strands that might connect to a broader puzzle nobody's solved. But after years of searching, the community's no closer to an answer. Miyazaki's undiscovered element has become Elden Ring's white whale, the thing everyone's looking for but nobody can find. This is From Software's ultimate secret item. It doesn't exist in any inventory or questline. It exists in the space between what's confirmed and what's possible. Miyazaki dangled the idea of an undiscovered secret, and the community's been chasing it ever since. Maybe it's a real item, maybe it's a joke. Either way, it's the perfect encapsulation of Elden Ring's design philosophy. If you think you found everything, you're wrong. There's always one more thing hiding just out of reach, an undiscovered element that might not even exist. That's FromSoft's endgame, making you question if you've missed something that was never there. But whether it's real or not, one thing's certain. If you enjoyed this video and want to see Skyrim's most disturbing locations explained, click the video on the screen.